As controversial as tax increases and historic preservation are here in Sandwich, so is the drama up on the hill. I'm talking about Heritage Gardens and Museums, and many of its neighbors locked in a battle, a dispute for over 5 years. Today, Scott-Putney, Heritage's new executive director, comes here to the studio, responds to my questions about zoning bylaws, expansion, lights, taxes, and much more. I'm Greg Anderson, and that's today's takeaway. Welcome back to the takeaway. Have we got a show for you? I would like to introduce my guest, Scott-Putney, the new executive director of Heritage Museums and Gardens. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
And I guess a welcome to Sandwich as well.
Yes, thank you.
Where were you before here?
Immediately before, I was in Southern California. And I was part of the senior leadership team of a large botanic garden there, but I'm from the East Coast originally. Good, good. And you went to Dartmouth College? I did. Holds a special place in my heart. I grew up in Hanover. Could never have gotten into Dartmouth, but it's great to. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take the next 30 minutes. We're going to unpack a lot of things. You and I had spoken on the phone about really the topic of the adventure park, as well as your 50th anniversary. So we're going to package all of that up into 30 minutes, a lot to go through. But here's where I'd like to start. You came in and really inherited a very complicated situation as it relates to the adventure park. There was the Supreme Court decision. You're a new executive director, so the leadership changed. You had indicated in a recent public meeting that there were mistakes that were made prior to you joining. Can you expand on that a little bit? What were some of the mistakes that you think were made as it relates to the adventure park? Sure. Well, first of all, I wasn't here then. But I think some of my approach is I just want to do things transparently, very openly, with open communication with our neighbors and with our community. And I think one of the things that we could have done better last time around when we applied for the permit was just to be more open and transparent with our neighbors about what our plans were and how we intended to go about it. And I think for that reason, it just caused more difficulties than there honestly should have been. And so I think this time, when we're applying for the special permit to operate it as a recreation facility, I just want to be very transparent and open about how we're going about it, what our plans are, and how it will benefit our community.
Was that a determination that was made perhaps by the board to say, okay, whoever comes in next, you got to have a little bit of PR savvy. You have to kind of the dynamic of communication and positive communication. We need to do a better job. Was that at all a discussion when you first came in?
I can't really speak for them so much, but I do know that one of the things they were interested in about me is that my background includes public relations, community relations, fundraising, et cetera. And I think my leadership style is just one where I'm very collaborative. I'm super committed to being an active part of my community wherever I live. Excuse me, and that's certainly my approach here in Sandwich. And I think that they were just interested in those aspects of me. I also have spent much of my career fundraising and raising funds for capital projects and operations, and so I think that was another aspect of my resume that I bring to the table, as well as my knowledge of collections.
Let's talk about the special permit.
Sure.
Outsider's perspective, myself, last summer Judge Moriarty made a ruling as it relates to the home values, which we're going to talk a little bit about as being diminished, but also the definition of it being an adventure park or an educational venue or not. Now you're going before the Board of Appeals, the Zoning Board of Appeals. Two questions for you. Why have you? Was it intentional to not appeal to the Supreme Court ruling? And two, what are you looking to gain, and what will come from this special permit should you be granted that?
Sure. So let me speak to the judge's ruling, first of all. His ruling was final with respect to the fact that the adventure park is not primarily educational use, and that's under an amendment called the Dover Amendment.
Okay.
So we didn't want to appeal that, but that doesn't preclude us from applying for a special permit to operate the adventure park as a recreational facility.
Okay.
And in fact, in his ruling, the judge pointed in several different times to the fact that the primary purpose is recreational. And so I think that's where we start to not split hairs, but you do need to get into the nuances a little bit just to understand his judgment that it was not primarily educational. That doesn't mean that there aren't many educational aspects to it,
sure,
but simply that primarily it was recreational, and that we have that option. I mean, we know that we have that option to apply for that permit for recreational use.
Okay.
Yeah.
So May 14th, you go before the Zoning Board of Appeals. What is it that you are looking to gain, and what will come from that should you get that special permit?
Sure. So may I just step back just for a minute and just sort of talk about the mission and why we believe it's important. So one might say, why is this something that Heritage would want to get involved with in the first place? I know many members in our community know and love Heritage, but they might not know exactly what our mission is, which is to celebrate American culture and to inspire people of all ages to discover, learn, and explore together, ... including outdoor discovery.
Yeah.
And so we believe that the adventure park, with its focus on combining adventure with nature, with bonding and family and teamwork, is a really good fit with our mission. And it extends our mission into an activity that can be enjoyed by people of all ages, but particularly, for example, for teenagers. It's kind of hard to find good things for them to do in the summer. So our intention with the zoning board meeting next Tuesday is to show what we believe is true, that our application to operate the adventure park meets and fulfills all the requirements of the bylaw for a special permit.
Yeah.
And we've put together our application. People can read it on our website. It's posted on our website, showing that under each of the conditions that are required for it to be permitted, we meet all those conditions. And so the Zoning Board of Appeals is, my understanding, is very focused on, does it meet the guideline or not? And that's our intention, is to show that it does, so that we can reopen the adventure park and make it available for people to enjoy again, because there are many benefits, we believe, to our community.
Some would say that this is a semantics thing. The adventure park, the educational versus recreational. How much does that, and when I say some, a lot of the critics, the neighbors, have said this is really an amusement park, almost by definition of the state, I think I heard somebody say. Is that going to be a challenge for you as it relates to making that argument, the educational versus?
Well, we're talking about a couple different things here.
Yep.
So let me say the amusement park argument is not difficult to address, because this is where I've learned things I never expected to learn, but an amusement park is in fact a collection of a certain number of amusement devices, something like 20 to 30. And the adventure park is not that.
Okay.
So it is not an amusement park. And people have used that terminology, and it's simply not true. When it gets into educational versus recreational, sure, it can sound semantic, but in fact, each one of those is attached to a definition, and each one of them is attached to a different type of permitting. And so we need to show that we fit the recreational use.
Okay. Here you come into this new position. You have, you know that there is significant neighbor conflict. By the way, you are a neighbor yourself.
I am a neighbor, yes.
And that was intentional. You said you moved and you wanted to live in the neighborhood upon which you work.
Right. Well, I want to be close to work.
Yes.
I want to be part of the neighborhood. I want to be part of the community.
Yeah. Having a 5-minute commute, come on.
What could be better than that?
What could be better than that? That's fantastic.
No excuses when it snows.
Exactly. In a recent, and I would say almost very contentious selectmen meeting, some of the neighbors had used the terminology that there was a lack of trust. That it seemed over these 5 years and a lot of drama, that trust has been violated. How do you regain that? How do you speak to the trust issue?
Well, I think we have to recognize that there's been a leadership change at Heritage, and I am a new leader. There's not a lot I can do about the past, but what I can encourage people to do is to focus on the present moment, to focus on what we're doing today, to hear my words. And one of the reasons that I feel it's important to speak out or to respond to letters to the editor, for example, is to correct misinformation. It's very important to me that people in our neighborhood who don't want this, and more generally, most of the people in our community who do, are dealing with factual and correct information. And so that's my purpose, is to gain trust of people by providing them with factual, correct, accurate, open, honest communication and information. That's how I operate. That's who I am.
Part of that is also one-on-one discussions with the actual neighbors. What have you done as it relates to direct outreach to the critics and the neighbors?
Sure. So on a couple different occasions, I've met with people individually. I've had very productive conversations. I mean, this is all very enlightening to me. It informs me. I understand what it is that people perceive to be issues and are concerned about. And so I'm working to understand what those are. At the end of some conversations, we might agree that we're going to disagree, but I don't disrespect that. People are entitled to feel the way they feel, but I feel that my job is to make sure that if the place they're coming from is a place of misinformation or speculation or just wrong information, that I want to correct that.
I want to give you that opportunity to totally lean in on any of the misconceptions or fact corrections as much as you can and want today. But I'm curious, has anybody from the neighborhood, plural, picked up the phone and called you and said, Ann, buy me a cup of coffee down at Beth's, and let's
I've done that
talk about
myself.
this.
I've said I'd like to buy you a cup of coffee, and it resulted not in a cup of coffee, but in a productive, discussion. In one case, a neighbor did want to learn more, and that was a very productive, informative conversation. This person was, I would say, a very good citizen seeking facts, and in fact, that led to this person approaching their neighborhood community group and asking on my behalf if I could come and talk to them. And I was really surprised and disappointed that the answer was no.
No.
Yeah.
They said, we don't want to hear from you.
No. And I'm sorry about that, because I know that there is some misinformation there, and all I want to do is for people to be able to know what the facts are and know what the truth is. But here I am. I want to be able to get that out there.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about taxes.
Sure.
This is one of the topics that has come up. I am a businessman where people hire me for my specialty in an industry. Specialists are important to bring in. You guys have a catering company that handles your food service. And I don't know if you mow the lawns over there or you hire a landscaper to come in
exactly.
to do that. But you brought in, and you got Hidden Hollow in there. It's a trademarked outdoor classroom. Outdoor Ventures out of Connecticut was brought in as the specialist for the adventure park.
Correct.
That totally makes sense to me. It's simple math. You're not in the adventure park business. You're not in the outdoor space, so you bring someone in. But there is a question as to whether or not taxes are being paid on the adventure park. Some say they're not. Can you speak to the tax issue?
Certainly, I will. And I will say that the adventure park does pay all the required taxes. It pays sales tax, it pays all the payroll taxes, and it pays property taxes. And I should mention too, and I think this is important just for our community members to know, the adventure park hires 20 seasonal employees who live in Sandwich. So what we're talking about here is not just all the community benefit to our neighbors and our visitors and people who come to the Cape, but we're talking about jobs for our local residents. I just think it would be really too bad if these people lost their jobs.
Yeah.
I mean, that might not be at the top of everybody's mind, but the truth is that the Adventure Park hires 20 seasonal residents, and Heritage, separate from the Adventure Park, hires 40% of our employees are Sandwich residents. So we contribute that way to our economy, and we have a big economic impact. So we pay all the taxes that are required of us to pay. And I will also say that if anything about the special permit, assuming that it's granted, if it changes our tax status in any way, of course we will pay any taxes that are required.
Okay.
If that changes it in any way.
So there isn't a corporate entity out of Connecticut that says, how can we skirt the taxes and not pay what we're owed? Because ultimately that falls down on the larger Heritage organization,
right,
to kind of...
No, we pay all the taxes that are required of us to pay.
Do you believe that house values have diminished by 10%?
No.
Why?
I do not. Why? I believe that because we were curious about that, and so we commissioned our own third-party outside professional study of real estate values in our neighborhood, in the very proximate neighborhood of Heritage and the Adventure Park. And what we learned, and we did this just recently, the person looked from before the Adventure Park went in through 2018 and discovered not only was there no negative impact on real estate prices, but in fact, real estate values went up.
They went up?
Yes, they did. And all of that information is posted on our website as well. I want neighbors to know that their real estate values did not go down by 10%. I would hope they'd be really happy to learn that they've gone up.
Yeah, so you think that's just a falsehood all around?
So I think when the group that filed the lawsuit filed it, they had a real estate study done. We did not, and so the judge credited their study. We were curious about those results, and so we wanted to investigate that ourselves and to reassure ourselves, but also to reassure our neighbors. And that's what this study just found. It was very comprehensive, it was super analytic, and it's posted for people to read.
And it's on your website. Let's talk about numbers of customers, visitors.
Sure.
How many do you have at the gardens and museums every year?
Sure. So last year it was 123,000. That included 18,000 at the Adventure Park.
Okay. Some have said you're going to jump that number to 50,000. What do you think of the future and the impact of new and more visitors coming up and down those roads to the Adventure Park?
Sure. So let's talk about the Adventure Park specifically. There are a couple things about the way that the bylaw is written about special permits that I want to get into on this.
Yeah.
One is, one of the pieces of misinformation that we hear out there is that people are convinced that we will be operating under lights at night. Because in fact, this does happen at some of the other adventure parks in other states that are owned by the same group. But I want to reassure people that that is not true and that is not going to happen, primarily because the bylaw doesn't allow it.
Okay.
And so one of the things that we're saying is that if a condition of reopening is not to do that, we're very happy to live by that condition. So why am I saying this? Because there are certain aspects of the way that our adventure park works completely differently from others that constrain that kind of growth. One way to grow is to open at night, but we're not planning to do that using lights at night. That's just not in our plan. The other way that you can grow is to expand your park. But if we wanted to do that, we would have to go through this whole permitting process over and over again. And so we have never had more than 31,000 people at the Adventure Park in any of the seasons that it's been open, and it opened in 2015. It's ranged from 18,000 last year up to 31,000 and in between. So that's where I see going forward, that's the zone that we'll be operating in. We'd have to do some expansion in order to change that, and that's not. I mean, there are other hoops that we would have to jump through, and that's just not that's not in the immediate plan.
So this discussion of 3 additional trails and lights and operating in the evening, not going to happen.
Yeah, and I will say about the expansion or adding more trails, if we did want to do that, we would go through this process all over again, and people would need to weigh in as well. So there is there's that transparency and community engagement and community discussion around that.
Right. Let's talk about traffic, speed, and roads.
Sure.
Very vocal as it relates to your critics very recently. Volume of traffic. Neighbors have stated that in your adventure park, it has increased traffic since it had opened, which frankly would make sense. Something new is up there. Frankly, I think if you have a new exhibit, you generate a little bit more bump in traffic. But the real question is, how much has it increased traffic? Can you speak to either traffic studies that you have done, are doing, your experience? What do we know from your perspective as to the impact of traffic volume?
Sure. So we did do a traffic study, and that's again another third-party outside, objective, very analytic study. And what it found is that there was no negative impact on traffic in the neighborhood as a result of the adventure park. That the volume of traffic was, well, I should say the roads, the way they're built, are entirely appropriate for the volume of traffic that came over them. And so they concluded that there was no negative impact from the adventure park. May I state one other thing?
Yeah, sure.
So one of the things that we did very proactively as well was several years ago, the adventure park adopted an online registration system whereby if you and your family wanted to come, you'd have to register in advance online for a specified time slot during the day. Okay. Because what we wanted to avoid were big, peaks and valleys of traffic, because everybody wanted to get there at 10 and climb. Right. That's not how it works. It works that you have your time slot and you need to sign up in advance. And so one of the effects that one of the lasting effects that has is to smooth out the traffic during the course of the day, because people are coming for their allotted time slot.
Okay. How is the definition of negative? When there's no negative impact, what is the definition of negative as it relates to a traffic study?
So I'm not a traffic study person. The study was done, and I would, that's something that I think that at the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting, if people have those questions, that person will be there to answer that.
Okay.
But essentially what it means is that the size of the road, the way the road is built, can absorb, in fact, a lot more traffic without any changes being made than the way it is today. And so it's the amount of traffic, the volume of traffic on the roads is appropriate for the roads.
Now, some have said that the walkability is impacted. It's a historic residential neighborhood, but being able to take a carriage of a child or little kids riding bikes, it is impacted by this. Is that a problem? There is talk about needing to expand the road. You're suggesting that that's not necessary, but how would increased traffic affect the walkability, if you will?
Sure. So, of course, we care about safety. We're parents. I'm a neighbor. I care about people being able to walk safely on the roads. And so that is not a concern that we have, but we hold that as being important, not only for our neighbors, but for our visitors. Again, the traffic study concluded that there could be much more volume on the road than there currently is. And so one can conclude that means that the roads wouldn't change.
Okay.
Yeah.
Speed. There's been discussion. There's an average of 30 miles an hour of speed. That means, oh boy, people must be, going about 50 miles an hour on the road. What have you learned through your traffic study as it relates to speed on the road? Is that a problem?
Well, I've talked with some town officials and town leaders, and one of them has said, Anne, there is not a problem with speed or traffic I'm talking particularly about Pine Street, as it relates to the adventure park. There just isn't. There are a lot more there are many greater problems in other aspects of Sandwich than there are on Pine Street with respect to the adventure park.
The future. You have talked about expanding. You got to go through a process if you have to do it, but there's nothing in the books right now that says we're going to, take over the world. But your critics have said that your successors, the board, the future stakeholders at Heritage and future zoning board of appeals members, anyone is going to be able to take advantage of a window of opportunity that would be opened if you get this special permit. There is a little bit of who knows what's going to happen. Now, I don't suggest that you can rub a genie bottle and say, okay, Greg, here's what's going to happen. But your plans, is there any level of change or expansion, even a little bit? Is there any additional planning concepts that you can talk to right now?
You're talking about the adventure park?
Yeah.
Yeah, so let me just back up for a second and say at the beginning I said I want people to focus, let go of the grudges of the past. Please stop speculating about things we don't know about in the future and let us focus on the present moment. Because I think that's really important. People get scared when they imagine a future that they're inventing. People get angry when they carry anger from the past. I just want to focus in the present. The special permit that we're applying for is for the adventure park exactly the way that it is today.
Right now.
Where it is, the hours that it's open, no lights at night, the number of courses that it is. And I said before, if we did want to expand, which we don't have any plans to do that in, that I see written or that in the immediate future, we would be going through this process all over again. Just as if any organization wanted to expand, they would need to go through that again in the future. And so I just want to try to bring people back to the present and focus on that and stop speculating about things that none of us control.
Right. The discussion about here is this group of neighbors, quaint New England, historic Cape Cod, going up against the big bad corporate America, the for-profit, group. What's your take on that narrative?
I'm disappointed by that.
Yeah.
I mean, let's remember the bigger picture. Heritage is celebrating its 50th anniversary.
Yeah, and we're going to talk
this year.
About that.
We're going to talk about that. Why do I say that? Heritage is a nonprofit organization. We have been for 50 years, and we will be here for the next 50 years, God willing, offering the same fabulous benefits that we do to our community. We're a nonprofit organization. And I don't think, I'm disappointed that people think it's a big bad corporation. It is a beautifully intentioned, fabulously envisioned organization whose mission is to bring people together with nature and have them challenge themselves physically and mentally in nature, exercise, test yourself, overcome barriers. Show who you are, learn who you are, build confidence. I do want to tell you a quick story, if I might, that illustrates this. And this is a story that was told to us by a teacher, a local teacher, who many of the schools, by the way, bring their students on a regular basis when they get to a certain grade. So they look forward to coming to the adventure park. But this is a story about a 13-year-old boy who was a smart kid, a little bit brainy, kind of quiet, maybe a little bit awkward, and didn't have a lot of friends. And a teacher told us this story. So he comes with his class to the adventure park, and the ones that thought they were going to do all right were the kind of popular athletic kids. I can do this. Well, it turned out that they were the ones that were struggling. And because the adventure park is not just physical, it's mental, it's problem solving, it's thinking ahead. How am I going to do this? It turned out that this young boy, 13 years old, was able to help his peers because he was more successful than they were at navigating that particular challenge. And they looked at him differently, and he felt more confident. He thought, wow, I'm using my mental acuity, my problem-solving skills here to show my popular friends or peers that it's not all about athletic prowess to get through this park. And so he was very successful. His peers learned from him. They all had a great day. And so when they got back to school, this young man, had a new sense of confidence of his importance to his peers, his ability to contribute, but his peers saw him differently as well. And I think that's one of the things about the adventure park that we cannot forget, that this is about testing yourself, but understanding yourself, your confidence, doing it with your family. This story to me illustrates that we might think about somebody with a certain label, but it's not all about that label. We might then discover in an adventure park situation that they have these skills that we always didn't really value that much, but look how well they came into play in this setting.
Interesting.
And so I think that those are the kinds of things I want people to know and understand. So whether it's themselves or their children visiting or their grandchildren, the Adventure Park has so much to offer to our community. And I also just want to say briefly that we make it available to a number of different populations, either discounted or for free. And that includes teachers for a week in the summer for free. Active duty military, always $5 off. And there are certain days for active duty military, along with first responders, that they can come and use the park for free. You know, we want them to feel that this is a resource and an asset for them. If they've had a really stressful day out putting out fires or responding to ambulance calls, and they need a little bit of time to get into nature or bond maybe with their team because they've gone through a different passage. We want them to be able to feel that they can come to the adventure, that they can come to the adventure park and use it without cost to them. This is a great benefit to our community.
You know, and you're talking about there is support.
Lots of support, lots and lots.
The challenge that you must be going through is whenever there's a town issue like this, those who are critical, those who are angry, they feel they've been violated, they tend to speak loudest. Their message can sting a little bit more, and it kind of puts an organization like yours on the defensive. You have to kind of respond and take opportunities like this to kind of, okay, I got to clarify, I got to, put our voice out there. Where are you getting support? Can you draw me a picture? Quantify that for me.
You know, I go to the grocery store and I wear my my name badge. And I always introduce myself and say I'm new in town, and people will say, you know, I love the Adventure Park. I've taken my grandchildren there. I go to the bank to cash a check. You know, the tellers and I have, you get to be friendly with people, and they say, how's it going? Oh yeah, I really support you. So that's sort of general in the community, but more specifically, people have reached out to us, either via board members or just directly to us and say, I would love to be able to support you, how can I help? And those are teachers. Not to forget local business owners. We have heard, and I don't want to name names because I don't think that's fair, but I have in my head very specific businesses who have told us how delighted they are that people who use the Adventure Park will come to their establishment afterwards to have dinner or to stay the night or to do whatever hospitality services they have to offer to businesses.
So it speaks to the tourism component.
Yeah, absolutely. They see that direct benefit because we're drawing a population here of visitors to Sandwich who want to experience this, who might not otherwise come.
Yeah. Anything else that you feel you need to clarify, want to clarify, bust a myth?
Well, I do see my role a little bit as a myth buster, but I did want to talk about the lights and clarify that. I wanted to talk about the real estate values, and I wanted to talk about the traffic. I think those are the main ones. But I think the bigger message that I want people to understand is that this has enormous positive impact on our community. From the neighbors whose sons work there, to my next door neighbors who bring their children and their grandchildren. And for them, this is an enormous asset. And they don't see any problem with traffic. They don't see any problems that other people say there are. They see it as an enriching to their neighborhood experience, certainly enriching to the town community experience. And they feel that it's a great asset, which it is.
You are entering this at the 50th year.
Thank you.
I want to shift gears because I have not been to the Adventure Park, but I have been to the gardens and museums. I absolutely love the exhibits. What are you doing? Take us through some of the highlights in a couple of minutes as to what you're doing for this 50th year in 2019. So
I want to just do three because I know we don't have a whole lot of time, but we are celebrating our 50th formally with a celebration and anniversary day on June 15th, which is a Saturday coming up shortly. We have the throwback admission price of $1.50, which is the same price we charged on exactly Saturday, June 15th, 50 years ago.
No kidding.
Yes, kidding, not kidding.
Great. That's great.
So we're hoping that all our community members will come up for that. It'll be a festival day. music, games, food, etc.
And then jazz band coming.
Jazz band that night. Nice. We have the new Black Eagle Jazz Band, which many people know about and love. But also the reason that we selected it is that it was Mr. Lilly's favorite band, and of course, you know, Mr. Lilly was our founder, and so it's honoring him, but it's also acknowledging that so many people here on the Cape enjoy that band. Yeah. And so tickets for that are available on our website.
Okay.
That's number one.
Yep, yeah.
The second thing I want to point out has to do with our exhibits. One of the things that we tried really hard to do, and the Black Eagle Jazz Band is one example of that, is to go with what people's favorites are. That band was a favorite. Kids Day is a favorite, and so we're bringing that back on July 27th. But with respect to exhibits, most people know us for our cars.
Yes.
And so one of the things that people have said is, we would love to see all your cars organized in chronological order, and we want to see all of our favorites come out. And so we have put together just the best of the best car exhibit called From Classics, from Carriage. Think about a almost horseless carriage to classics, how automobiles transformed America.
Do you have new cars coming in?
We have cars from the Heritage Collection.
Yeah.
So these are some that have not been shown in quite some time,
oh, neat.
Including those that people are familiar with like our Duesenberg and President Taft's presidential vehicle, which is stunningly imposing and beautiful. But it's not, of course, we never just do an exhibition of the cars. It tells the story of how, when the whole automobile industry started out, what were the choices that people had? Was it going to be an electric car, a steam car, a gas-powered? Was it coal? How was this going to happen? And so people, as they look at the cars, each one sort of gives an example of an innovation in car technology that tells the story of how cars got to be the way we know them today.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely fascinating, and the cars are exquisite.
When are you going to buy a Tesla and put a Tesla in there?
Well, it's interesting. One of the questions is electric cars. You know, that was one of the things that people were, I don't want to say toying with, but really tinkering with and trying to understand. And we do actually have an electric-powered vehicle as one of the cars that we're showing.
Sweet.
So that's sweet. That's number two.
Yes, and you got one more. Yeah.
One more.
Of many.
Well, one more of many, but I also want to say that for those people that love art and other kinds of artifacts and memorabilia, we have our 50 for 50 exhibit, which are selectors, friends of heritage, have chosen their favorite pieces from our collections. And so that's when we're bringing back, some people just love the military miniatures that we have. And so we have 1,000 of those on display. Some people love the beautiful silver replica of the America's Cup, and so that's on display. Some people love our Cahoon artists exhibit, and so that's on display. But it's not just art and artifacts. Among the 50 are also examples of the best rhododendrons, of hydrangeas, trees, the hidden hollow, and the carousel, which was chosen by our students in the 100-acre school. Yeah. So we've put together a scavenger hunt throughout the entire grounds, where people can start and follow 1 through 50 to see our 50 favorites.
That's wonderful. You must be pretty excited about
Oh my goodness, we're thrilled.
Yeah.
And we've had great response to it as well. So we invite all people to come and enjoy Heritage's 50th anniversary.
Safe to say that you can find all of this information plus more on your website.
On the website.
Including all of the Adventure Park gritty
people want to
documents and
sure, they can sit down and read it.
And thank you for coming in, and
you're welcome.
And maybe to the extent of what you said, break some myths apart, but bring some clarity. I appreciate it, and good luck.
Thank you.
On your 50th year. This is terrific, and thank you so much.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much.
You bet. That is another takeaway. I'm Greg Anderson. We'll see you next time. Thanks.